Okay. Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon. How you doing? We're at the end of, well, we're in the kind of the final quarter, aren't we? So can we do it? Energy level up enough? Try to keep it going for you. Welcome. I'm Kevin Ashman, the Senior Vice President of Services at MasterControl. And this session, you're going to find it's probably a little bit different. This is not going to be it's not a technical session. This is more about some of the things that we've learned, or I've learned over years. I've been in the business for about 25 years, implementing software in different companies, and large enterprise companies, and big projects. But I want to share with you a few things. So I'm going to get started because of time, and we'll just have to see if my clicker works. Okay, there we go. So I want to start out with this video clip. We'll see if we can get it going here. And you've probably seen it. I think I'm going to start out with it. Maybe not.
Or they just advance?
Yeah, there we go. So, got a lot of things setting up here. So we'll begin. If you can get it to click, let me know. It should just go right into the... Is the internet going?
Yeah. Do you want to try to pull it up that way?
Well, I mean, this should link to YouTube link. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think I can just go from this. So this was a video clip of the landing, right? And I don't know if I saw it too. I'm not going to tell you how old it, no, but I remember that, and some of you may have as well. And I don't know if you've noticed the moon here. Have you the last few nights?
Big and bright.
Big and bright. It's been incredible. So this kind of ties into that. But what I wanted to do is show this, but what I want to do is just talk for just a moment about what we learned from that journey. So if you click to the next one. So, or the previous one.
Before the moon picture? Let's see.
That's it.
There we go.
There we go. What did we learn from that journey? I mean, so my kids and I, we were sitting in the back of our home. I live almost on the other side of this mountain. And we're sitting in our kitchen, and we're looking at the moon's coming over the hill. And I said, guess what I learned? I'm doing this presentation, and I learned some things about what we learned from the journey of going to the moon. What did we learn? What did we gain from that journey? What came to us from that journey? Some of the items or some of the innovation. Do you know?
Tang.
Tang? Yeah, absolutely. Tang. What else? I mean, it's surprising what you know. Velcro? Right? So go ahead and click that. Let me see does this work? Yeah, there we go. So here are the things that NASA put on their site. So TV satellites, right? Medical imaging devices. That's close to home to this group, right? In-air thermometer, fire-resistant materials. So the list goes on. Shock-absorbing materials, weather satellites, cordless power tools. I didn't know that. I use those all the time. And then joystick video game controllers. We kind of knew that, right? How they landed. So those are some of the things. But the most profound, what do you think the most profound discovery was out of all of that? What's that?
You could do it.
That we could? Yeah. We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth. That's from the astronaut, one of the Apollo astronaut Bill Anders, Apollo 8. And then this quote, the most profoundly significant tangible objects we got from the moon landing and the Apollo program may well have been those photos that show the Earth from the lunar surface. It's the human element. They saw the Earth for the first time. They saw how pretty it was. And that brought profound changes to how we view ourselves, how we look at humanity, and said, the Earth really is beautiful. It really is worth saving, protecting, managing. That was the most profound discovery. So oftentimes what we find is the things that we think are so important to us, and technology is, aren't the most important things. And I would submit what I gained in dealing with systems over the years is as whiz-bang as computers are, and nice in the devices we all enjoy, the cell phones, it really does come back to the human element. Why do we do it? And John talked about this yesterday. Why do we put these systems in place? What do we do with the technology? Well, if you're like me, I talk to my daughter all the time. I said, it's great texting with you every day. So send me texts. We text back and forth as a family a lot. But it never can substitute sitting down with them at the kitchen table talking about money. Right? And so the best practices I'm going to talk about, you'll find that they have a lot of human element in them. Things that you need to consider when you're putting a system in, especially and namely MasterControl. So what have we learned, and what have you learned? And please interact. I know we just have 40 minutes, but if there are things that you want to interject into this presentation, please do so. I don't have all the answers, but I talk to a lot of you, and I get a lot of feedback. So what are some of the things we learned? First of all, we have a proven methodology that we developed. That this methodology should never override people. And it's based on agile principles. You can see everything iterates here. During the planning phase, we iterate during discovery, we iterate your configuration. By the way, these slides will all be available to you, as well as there's a blog article that I wrote on this. You'll be able to get the link. So I don't want you to have to worry too much about how fast I go through some of these slides. But all of these are iterative processes. And for the longest time, a lot of our customers interpreted that some of these had to precede the others. And that is true to some degree. But you can still be in a discovery process and a planning process and a validation process all at the same time. You know, I mean, you'll find that as that train takes off and leaves the station and goes down the track that we were talking about this morning, that will have to happen. And the goal is starting to think that way. So we think more agile in how we do things. And that's a term. How many are familiar with that term, what that would mean? Agile. Methodology, right? And if I were to simplify it, it means to iterate quickly, to go quickly. And in many cases, even with the moon, the travel to the moon, it meant to fail quickly. Fail quickly and recover quickly. And we had some failures. We lost some astronauts. And we had some other failures where Apollo 13 figured out how to get back. And that was miraculous. But it was based on failing quickly, try this, here are all the materials you can work with, and move forward. So what we're saying is when we start implementing systems, the goal is to start modeling with you as fast as we can, especially in the iterative process. So you can visualize it, you can see it, you can make changes to it. So, as we get into best practice, the first thing I would say, my observations in this area, really are often defining needs and objectives are so important. And I want to stress that because that's what we talked about yesterday, the why. If you don't define objectives and people don't know why you are putting a system in, you are at a disadvantage. And as much as you heard, okay, define your objectives up front, define your success statement and what you should see, your vision statement, things that you have to do in every project. No, it's essential because you have to know why. And when I talk about vision, the easiest way I can get that into my mind is that's what you see when you stand on top of the mountain, right? So that's what you see when you see that system in your mind. That's what you see that system doing for your users. That's your vision statement, right? And so you're going to come in, and it's often set. These objectives are often set during the pre-purchase process, and sometimes we think, well, that's good enough. But if you think about the RFP process or whatever process you might have yourselves, did you ever define that into some specific objectives that have the why? It was more of that functionality. So think about putting the why into what your objectives are, and then use that to establish your criteria for success. What do you see when you're on top of the mountain? But when that system starts working, what do you see? Is it happy users? Is it a happy system? Or is it work for somebody else to keep it going? So some of the best practices, the key success factors: identify your stakeholders, document your current state as best you can. And we realize you can't do that. And what I mean by current state is just at least know how you want that process to work now. And sometimes people can get too detailed in this or worry too much about current and future state. And I'm using some terms that have to do with lean. But just make sure you understand where you are, because that's where you're going to start. And you may not have time to define the future state because you're in a hurry and you have objectives and stuff. And so your current state is so important. All your processes, how they work, should be on paper somewhere. Right? Current challenges that are involved. Who are the people they're working with? And what are their personalities? And how are they going to react to technology? And how are they going to deal with that?
You know, sometimes when you're trying to come up with the objectives, it's because you've had so many failures.
That's right.
That's like, we got to automate something so we keep getting gained on all these failures.
You probably realize there are a lot of software missions to the moon that have failed.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really a sad thing, because software was never intended to be built to not be flown, to be used, but it gets shelved all the time. And we don't want that to happen. So that's a very good observation. And then the benefits you're going to get from that automation. And those benefits could be simple things that equate to very large things. And often that's the case. Simple, usually you can have really, really big ramifications. So the next one, you want a clear and concise success statement. Doesn't have to be flowery or anything. It could just be, say, we're going to land on the moon. But it's just something that can relate with everybody. It's the thread, that one-liner that you pull through everybody. Okay? So the next one really is get user input. My observation is slow user adoption is often a key barrier to implementation success, right? So it's usually not the software. As much as we'd like to say software doesn't help us along, but it's usually not. And I've seen this with several. I've worked with literally hundreds of software packages. So the other observation I would make is when users see the top management is committed to supporting the project, then they'll have a higher level of acceptance. So if you don't have an executive sponsor, or you are the executive, you need to get one. And there's been some talk about here at the summit about how you can do that. But that's really important that you have executive sponsorship. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be involved in all your meetings and help you implement, and they're not going to. But when you hit a roadblock with acceptance, they're going to help you. So, identify your project manager, your sponsor, champion, or executive. When you do the RFP, start out early. When you're looking for that new system, or when you're looking for that next upgrade. So this applies to whether it's a new system or an upgrade project, any project. Identify, involve executive sponsor in the project kickoff and summary updates. One paragraph, so you need to send every week. Just like the Apple Array, which works. Right? And then gain input from your users in your discovery phases. Know their processes, we talked about that. Utilize MasterControl templates, prototyping, and configuration tools. I have good news for you. I know that some of our tools are a little bit difficult, sometimes hard to work with, but on the planning and going through the process, we have our configuration manager tool that's coming out in the next couple of releases, which will help you easily move your configuration from one instance to another. So you can start prototyping and moving through validation and testing and other things. Okay, so look for that. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Train more on this. I'm more than one system administrator. I know that's simple, but it's sound advice.
At least two.
Yeah. So how many of you went through Surprise and System X, right? Well, most of the people are in that one that suffered from this, right? The original people who are gone, right? And so the more depth you can get, the better. And use your development environment for modeling. So we give you 3 environments, right? That development environment is for you to be able to envision a new release. It's get that vision, start establishing what you want to see as that train starts going down the tracks, right? 11.2, 11.3, 10.9, 10.1.9, whatever it is. You want to see that and start making decisions based on that. Okay. This is kind of happens. That's why it's funny, because we know you were talking about, Phil. Oftentimes we get all the way to the end, right? Oh, we got that part wrong right at the very end. It's pretty frustrating, isn't it? That's what happens a lot when we're just going and going and going, and we forget just a little thing. It only involves, develop. So you want to look at your risks. And this isn't something, you're quality professionals. Looking at risk should not be something that is looked upon negatively. It's a way of controlling the success of the project. So you want to look at your potential risks. And my observations in these areas, certain risks related to software and people are inherently involved in any major implementation project. So anything, it's always going to apply. And I see them in these areas. Okay? And you just have to look at those and say, to what degree am I doing it? And some of the risk factors, operational complexity, the organization may be pretty complex. I mean, that's some tough stuff to look at. Schedule and budget. Well, I guess you don't really need to worry about budget, do you? User experience. What's the past experience been? You have a lot of cynics, right? You have some people that have had a negative experience and need a better experience and kind of get them past that. It's a risk. It really is. Role clarity. People's roles can often change within the system. Now that's an easy statement to make, but that's reality, and that's tough for some people. It's going to change my job. That's not easy. So that's potential risk. So what do we do about that? Identify and classify the risks. And I've seen this done just simply on as simple as a spreadsheet where you say schedule, budget, operational, list each risk, and then categorize it. And then the key is to keep visiting this every time you iterate on your project, every time you hit a milestone in an important project. So that methodology I showed you, the planning phase. After the planning phase, you should say, okay, are my risks still the same? Have I mitigated any of those risks in my plan? Or are they still there? Because they'll come up. They'll come up and you don't want them to help at the wrong time. So the other thing is identify risk mitigation actions and then put them into your plan. So I know these things seem simple. They're a lot harder to do. And that's why I'm giving you some of these best practices, because it's the simple things that really make a big difference. Observations, resources. Does anybody have a problem with resources? And I thought, I don't. We're continuing to look at the resource. That's almost 50% of my job, is determining whether you have enough services resource to meet your needs, and determine when you're doing it. And so, I know you have the same thing. You invest a lot of money into the new software, only to fall short in allotting budgetary and labor resources. Right? We understand the dynamics and the forces and all of that goes into getting the right resource, but nonetheless, very important. And the company projects tend to compete with one another for attention and resources. That's where the executive sponsor comes in, right? You want to be on the top of his or her list, right, of projects that you support. So we go on to some of the success factors. Use the templates, prototyping, right? Because they cut down on resource and they leverage pieces for you. They're modules, so to speak, that can cut down and reduce decision-making time or use to help make decisions quickly. You know how hard it is. How many here have gone through a Kaizen process before you implement a master control or some kind of process? It take a while. And is it hard to do in the context of the project? Yeah. And so if you've done that before and you can use those at jump starts, you have your current state, you can look at that. Quality, we want to emphasize the quality in import spreadsheets. When you put the data in, take the time. We try to put some validation in there on the data, but it's very important for quality data because it's going to go into the system as it is. Right. Use MC configuration tools, and we talked about that to reduce the errors. And we talked about the fact that we'll be coming up with some more tools on configuration to keep that, reduce the amount of time you have to spend in reconfiguring when you go from one environment to another. Possible use of MC reference material. When I say reference model, we have some configurations that are pre-done, right? Like, do we have any Spark customers in here? Do we have any DHF? Right? Those are some of the reference models. We'll have a GLP or GCP. We'll have some reference models with this configuration manager, these reference models that you can choose to see if they fit close to your configuration. And then you can adjust to them or refine. Once again, an agile principle, quickly get something there, something there, refine. And then look for major improvements in the configuration and tooling tools. What are we doing on time? Okay.
15 minutes.
So, I wanted to bring this one up. Conduct careful resource planning. Because the adequate resource planning includes building a team with the skills. So sometimes you may have the right number of people, but not the right skill set on the team. You have to look at really what you need for that. Now, MasterControl, our implementation team can help you and guide you on what resources you should get. But don't be afraid to talk to appropriate people in your organization about the level and skill level you need on your team. Or make those decisions yourself. And it's not rocket science. We've been talking about going to the moon. It's not rocket science, so you don't have to be perfect. And you don't have to have a perfect team. But you need to have people who can articulate your processes, who understand your processes, and know what job requirements are there for your job code. You have to have the right team. And then leverage industry experts behind MasterControl, so we can help you with that. We realize you can't have all of that, and we try to get people with a lot of experience that can do it. And then make sure your validation resource is well versed in using MasterControl validation for. We try to introduce that to you, and then as you go forward, continue to use that. One thing I would add here is oftentimes we'll get to this phase and there's not a validation plan. Okay, so we provide a validation plan template, but that's something from a compliance perspective that you need to have in place. So for every project, just make sure you're updating your validation plan or that you're getting help from us to do that so that it can flow all the way through. I see some heads nodding. Is that your experience on validation? It went really well. Yeah, and that's good. That's good to hear. We're getting better at giving you the tools you need to make that happen faster. Okay. Establish realistic expectations. Many organizations set overly optimistic go-live dates. Okay. We know that's a reality in business in general, right? Despite the realities, the limitations of the project. And as much as we may be pressuring you in overly optimistic go-live dates. If that happens, you need to push back on us. You also have to realize that we're going to push back on you if we don't think it's appropriate. But we'll do our best to meet the dates. We'll do our best. Because that's where you are, the realities. But we know that this happens. This kind of happens often in business. Unforeseen issues often arise, meaning that the project changes or evolves, the process must evolve with it. So as those changes happen, you have to change your processes. You may have to change your team, you may have to change some other dynamics along with it. Give yourself some flexibility. It may take longer, you may have to adjust some things. Don't keep your dates so that they're right up against the wall. You know, give yourself some time to prepare for those go live dates. And then after you go live, give yourself some time to absorb the system and determine where to take it to the next level. And that's a couple of months maybe. You know, it may take longer in your organization. But give yourself some flexibility and give yourself a break too. I see a lot of customers that say, no, this has to be perfect now. And, you know, it's a lot of pressure on you. Because you're dealing with a system, but you're dealing with people that are changing what they're doing. And then leverage vendor and other customer knowledge. So we're here for you to leverage, to use what we have, what we've learned, and how we can help you. Or maybe it's somebody else other than MasterControl that's been helping you in some ways. Make sure your stakeholders, you know, you've negotiated things with your stakeholders, with your executive sponsor, and you have that kind of, I don't know, a contract in place with them about how things are going. Have you seen this before?
Yeah.
The reason it's so good is because it's true, right? It happens all the time. How the customer wants it and what the customer really needed. We struggle with it as an organization, right? And making sure that when we get a request from you, we know how it really should end up. And so Brian Curran and his team, the services team, we're continuing asking questions. Now, is this really what you want? Can you envision that? So monitor and communicate continuously. It's just the process of software implementation is dynamic. It requires dynamic communication constantly. And sometimes there's a hesitancy to keep everybody informed because we think it may make it more difficult. Have you ever felt that way? Well, if I communicate with everybody, I can tell you, I think that that's my experience is the more you communicate, the better off you are. And the frequency, and the more frequently you can communicate better. And then promptly addressing the issue and developing a good working relationship with MasterControl. So if you don't feel you have a good relationship with us and you're implementing, then we need to get that fixed. Just like any other relationship, right? We need to work on fixing that, make sure it's fixed. So, conduct milestone audits throughout the project. We try to help you with that with our templates. After in those iteration phases, we say, here's a good time for us to evaluate. This is a good transition point. About this point, about this time, you should be talking about validation. About this point, you should be talking about this. But those audits of what we're doing are really important, so that we can make course corrections. Communicate with MasterControl after go live. Now, a lot of times you think, okay, I've gone live, I don't need to communicate as much. Now, this is a really important sign, right? Because this is when you're going to maintain a communication with an ongoing maintenance and support. Our support organization needs to be talking to you on a regular basis. And you're going to develop a very deep relationship with that team. And then training offerings and software updates. So we have training now that's available. NC University, that's meant to be continuing education type training. More and more will come out in that so that you can stay updated. And with that train scenario that was presented this morning, we need to, that's more and more important. And we're trying to do that in pieces, small pieces, rather than big chunks, right? So that you can do it. So it's reasonable. And it makes sense. So this is a summary of these best practices so that you'll be able to get to that very quickly. That's an article that I put together with our marketing team. You'll be able to access that and get more. This slide deck will be available to you post-conference. You'll be able to get to this blog. But from what I understand, it's published in more than one spot now. So, is that right, David? Not just our blog, it's someone else picked it up. But this right here, you can get to that article. Just a quick thing, and I know that I only have 5 minutes or so. I want to go over change management success. And when I say change management, it's change management on all levels: people, technology, processes. It's essential to the ongoing success of any solution. So critical and required in a regulated environment. How many are regulated? Most, good, right? And deployed easily with MasterControl's frequent release process. So the goal is to get to that point where it's not a Herculean task to keep this thing in its validated, regulated state. That's our goal. Strictly follow on a custom process project. How many of you have done custom process before? Okay, this is critical. This is that design document, making sure we iterate, making sure it's all documented, because change control is very, very important to the success of that solution. And then easily leverage with minimal changes to solution packages. So if you are able to take one of our solution packages and then just do a little bit of change there, it's easier. Right? Custom process will allow us to continue to evaluate that one. Or continue for you to evaluate as you apply it in the future. So this just as a process shows that sometimes how we deal with different types of changes in the process. It could be minimal change. It could have a minor change. Or it could be custom. And so we have some some processes on our end to help manage this. And this is from SOP 8089. And it's available to you as well. The customer website, if you can't find that, just let our support team know or send me an email. We'll make sure you can get access to this. It's how we manage change with a customer or any of the process solutions. Get the word out, generate excitement. We all like to hear successes, even if we consider them limited in our own mind. Little things do make a big difference. And then use your project team to communicate the upcoming system to the group. So let the people, I don't know, I've seen that oftentimes when you let your project team do this, it's a reward. They've worked really hard. And so putting them in front of others and letting them share what they've done, it's a way to reward them for their efforts. And some may not be comfortable with that, and that's fine, but those that are comfortable will likely find it quite rewarding to be able to share what they've done and train. And then provide user training and support. And then I just threw this up here. We have a store, and you can buy MasterControl stuff. And this really isn't a money-making thing for us, but I mean, you can get stuff anywhere, but it goes a long way when they get a little pin or something that just says thank you or lets them know that you're excited about the system. So it can go a long way. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And I just say, oh, send you some pins, and oh, that was the greatest thing in the world. You know? And it is. It makes people feel good about what they're doing. So, thank you. I know that we went through that very quickly. But if we have any questions, I know we have a couple of 3 minutes, but any questions or comments that we can cover?